Hello YouTube, this isn't going to be my normal video. My videos in the past have been centered around LDS or Mormon apologetics. This present one will be a little more politically based. I've generally reserved those for my text comments, but I felt really that this was something important to address. So here I go. This is in response to Liberal Mormon Musings. That's his online YouTube moniker. I believe his name is Eric LaRue. He did several episodes he's done on his episode 3 is titled LMM Episode 3, the Eric LaRue Doctrine of Entrepreneurship. Previously he's talked about what he believes is the necessity of the government to support entrepreneurs, to subsidize entrepreneurs such as himself in order to what he determines was providing for the general welfare as stated in the Constitution. I'm going to go through, I have a list here of points that I came up while listening to his video for a second time. He claims that the problem, hold on, sorry. He talks about resources with the early pilgrims. I guess he'd gotten in a dispute with someone else. I believe it was some conservative LDS or Mormon commentator that critiqued him on his stuff. They talked about the resources and the pilgrims, and I believe there was both an incorrect view of history by both of them. They didn't. LaRue claimed that they came here and everything was there for the taking. In a sense, it's kind of true. In a sense, not. They did have to take out loans, most of them, in order to get across the Atlantic, which they ended up paying back. There were investors that were paying for all of the companies they came across. Those that had special interests, such as religious groups, had co-ops, and they'd have people sponsoring it, putting money into it. When the state did put into it, they were looking for a profit motive too. So profit motive was primarily what drove the early settlers of the Americas here. And aside from that, even if you look at the early, the Mayflower Compact, when they first started living here, they tried living in a communal society and setup, and a lot of that was, they ended up floundering. They didn't have their equations right, and it wasn't until they flipped over to a capitalist, a free enterprise, where people weren't subsidized, where they weren't doing things communally, was when things took off. When things weren't subsidized, but things were allowed to run their course. Also, on the point of timber, it may have been there, but you'd have to have an axe and a saw, and they'd have to be in good condition. I don't know if you've seen any of those reality shows that they've had on it, but even their implements back then were rather nowhere near what they are today as far as taking down. I mean, a saw you can get for a couple bucks at Home Depot is far better than the saws that they had to deal with for taking down trees. And the axes and everything there was a lot of investment that went into it, and they didn't really have anybody paying for it, so they were actually going to investors. But moving on, there was a point he also made that all material commodities are under the control of someone else. That's not really the case. As far as physical items, he's got a pretty good point. But today's economy is really quite an information economy. It's not based on sawing logs or planting crops as much as it is coming up with new ideas, whether to entertain or to enhance productivity or to enhance processes. It's very much a knowledge-based economy. And knowledge, especially with the World Wide Web now, is quite freely available. I know of a great many people who have been able to obtain educations that they essentially didn't pay for because they were deriving a great deal. I mean, similar to the axe and stuff, there was some investment in the tools to access the knowledge, but for the most part, they really didn't have to invest a whole lot to gain stuff. And so this whole thing where he says the quote that without these resources, willingness to work becomes worthless is not really the case, because especially in the context of today's society, a willingness to work and even a minimal level of capacity will enable you to obtain means of gaining resources and thus working if you're put to it. And that's a big part of the reason why many immigrants over the ages have been able to come to Americas without resources and take out loans and eventually prosper as they worked hard and put their shoulder to the wheel, as it were. He also talks about that it would be more consistent in keeping with the roles of government, the role of government to provide, to put investment money into entrepreneurs. He claims that the profit motive being the only thing to back up private investors of all stripes, versus the government, which he says is there to provide for the common welfare, or general welfare is how it's termed in the Constitution. The problem I see with this is a common one in socialist setups and setups where you're subsidizing things, is the money is coming from somewhere. And to claim that it's just for the general welfare, that anything is for the general welfare, is certainly some choice that can be made, and it's quite subjective. It can become quite subjective, but really, when you're looking at the general welfare, you want to make sure that it truly is for the general welfare. If you're subsidizing one set of entrepreneurs based on some abstract, some subjective judgment, and some other people are not going to be benefited, and the money is coming from somewhere. The government is either taking out loans, it is either paying through taxes, or it's doing through inflation. Either way, you are taking money from some to give to others. It's a reallocation of wealth, and that judgment and who decides whether or not it is for the general welfare or not is very scary. In fact, he talks about how it provides jobs and makes elected officials look good. This is certainly the case. If you look at in the Book of Mormon, it talks about people that were seeking power and authority. In a sense, when you're given an investment, an amount to invest, that is some degree of power and authority. And I believe it gets into a slippery slope. I believe it was Spencer W. Kimball who pointed out in one of his books. He had several good ones, but he talks about one of the titles, and I would suggest reading this book, is Socialism, the Royal Road to Communism. But there's many other points. But to take and to do these things, to have some subjective judgment as to what is for the general welfare and what isn't, and to base elections on that even, and of course that's what's led to our growing socialist state, is the fact that people do get, when they do get jobs, the politicians do get really elected, and so they keep reallocating more and more resources, and they broaden their view of what is for the general welfare, whether or not it actually is. Now, I'm not some big rah-rah for the all for the profit. I believe government needs to be there to keep in check monopolistic and oligopolistic tendencies, and to break up monopolies and things of that nature, to keep it an actual free market rather than some free market that's been allowed to descend into some overpowering corporatism. But generally, the less hands-on the government is, the more this is promoted. And actually, healthcare is a prime point on this. I'm just going to stop this because I think it's getting too long.